Well, hello, revolutionaries. Welcome to another episode. This is MK Bryan with EmpoweRx. And today our guest is Eliseo, and I'll turn it over to him. Eliseo, tell us what makes you a revolutionary.
Hi, MK. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I have been a nurse for 28 years and have seen a lot of changes in our field.
Mhm.
And COVID-19 has really accentuated that and kind of compressed what's going to be happening to the nursing field. My wife and I are both trained ER nurses, trauma nurses from LA County, USC. That was early back in the 90s, and we relocated to Pennsylvania, where we're working. She's still in the emergency department, and I went into case management as
Okay.
in the emergency department as well as on the floor.
Nice. Nice. And I know you guys have been at the same hospital system for quite a few years, right? Which is
Right.
nice. So you kind
It's
of go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a level 2 trauma center, same health system. I've been there for 18 years, and she's been there for at least 10. The fun fact is that our older daughter is a labor and delivery nurse at the same hospital. And then our recent graduate, our 22-year-old, just became a med-surg nurse at a level 1 trauma center. So all four of us are sitting down in the kitchen table and telling our own stories. And
Yeah.
we all are starting to have our own fun stories to tell about our experiences. So that's one great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's so compelling, I know you and I met, it's been probably, I think, almost 2 years now. It was
Right.
August 2018, and introduced me to some great tacos, which always get you in the top tier of my list, by the way. But that was so wonderful. And I was just reflecting, and I was like, my goodness, I can't believe it's been 2 years. And one of the things is I was reflecting on, our conversations and just kind of, watching, through social media and our interactions there over the past couple years is knowing everything that you and your wife know about nursing, being in it so long, and here you've raised these amazing women to go into the field, and with all the challenges and all the things that face us that I think got even more exposed, with COVID. I think they were there pre-COVID, but now they're kind of out in the light, and
Hmm.
that's really intriguing to me. And I think it's intriguing to a lot of people because we see so many people leaving the bedside, and here you guys are fostering this career in your family. And so tell me a little bit about that, and like what drives you guys to do that, and have your children kind of follow in your footsteps.
I think our children basically followed us because they heard a lot of our ER stories, and they were very intrigued about that. And but on our end, my wife and I, my wife really was affected by being in the ER and not being able to, take care of her mother. She had to be isolated, and my wife never knew what type of patients that she was getting in the emergency department. So at times she would come home and cry herself to sleep because it was really that scary.
Yeah.
On my end, I switched over after 20 years to case management about 8 years ago because I needed to um, basically take care of myself, the
Yeah.
longevity in nursing, and I wanted something a little bit more um, easier. Most of my patients would spit at me or throw me, right?
Yeah.
Because I was trying to defend my work wives. Um, and so I said 8 years ago, I said, I need to really change
Yeah.
and not necessarily be direct care. My wife continued, obviously, right?
Hmm.
Um, but what I learned about in case management is the holistic side of taking care of the patients, because in the ER we'd treat them and treat them, and they would you'd forget about them, and the volume usually would be, let's say, 150 to 200 patients, and you have a 1-to-4 ratio, and you take care of them, and here you have another patient, and it's never ending. You do your 12-hour shifts and stuff. So that's on our end, right? And
Right.
then the girls are now doing their own thing and learning about the industry, and um, they have a secure job, but eventually, just like what's happening with the seasoned nurses, they're starting to get burnt out.
Right.
And also, there's again the caregiver burden, and just the fact that um, it seems like we're just chess pawns in the healthcare maze, and we really need to change. And what I'm seeing is, again, an exodus out of direct care.
Yep.
All of the Facebook groups that I belong to, that's the heaviest topic
Yep.
is, what can I do differently?
Yeah.
I'm tired of this. I don't want to be subjected to, let's say, a vaccine or, annual uh, pneumonia vaccines, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
those types of topics.
Yep.
And also just the pay inequity. And
Right.
so that's where I'm seeing the conversations now. But it's all about the patients. That's the reason
Yeah.
why my wife and I are still in the emergency department, because we love our grandmas and grandpas, and it really um, satisfies our souls to be
Mm.
able to guide them through the emergency department where it's really, really chaotic, right?
Yeah.
And kind of give them the overall view of what's going to be happening in this moment in time,
Right.
and to guide them through. Whereas on my end, after I see them in the emergency department, um, I can refer them to community resources where I have vetted out those people that will really take care of them beyond the hospital walls.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just, that commitment to patient care that keeps you guys there,
Mhm.
and doing what you're doing despite how difficult it is. And I know just from talking with so many nurses over the years, ER is a really tough gig because you have, unpredictable patients, you've got, drug addicts and, all kinds of things that can go, so wrong so quickly. And my brother's in at Temple, which is,
Oh,
the
no
ER,
way.
which is, yeah. So
All
that's
right.
like, yeah, really, really rough stuff going on, and it's high burnout. And so thank you so much for doing what you do. And I know you touched on for your daughters, that job security. Obviously, we've had a nursing shortage
Hmm.
well before COVID. Again, these things that got exacerbated through the last year, bringing them to light. And so I think that's a really good point is there's this job security, but what is the toll of that? And I think, with what you do with case management and transitioning to that, to look at the holistic side and to be able to, have people get care afterwards while also taking care of yourself,
Hmm.
that's a great transition. And I know that what we do with empowering clinicians to be able to earn more money, have some autonomy. But the other piece of what our mission is from a facility side to talk about concepts like proactive staffing for
Hmm.
relief,
Right.
and things like that that are like, what are you talking about? All we do is react, right? That's all anybody does is react. And so I think that, that's one of the things that we're trying to do, to give those relief to the, especially obviously the nurses that are going to experience this in the future. We're hoping in 5 years, our model is the model of what's happening. And so a lot of kudos to that. Tell me a little bit more about what you saw through your eyes as a case manager through the COVID crisis and how it affected your facility with staffing and other issues that maybe might not, other folks in other roles might not have seen.
Well, on my end, I never stopped working. Uh, One of my roles is just to make sure that there's a safe discharge,
Mm.
and I couldn't find any facilities that would accept them because they didn't have the PPE or they didn't have the staff. We ended up having just a handful of facilities that were able to take care of patients with oxygen. Some of them were really high flow oxygen, had a prolonged stay at the hospital, sometimes 30 days at times.
Oh, wow.
There's some that didn't fit the criteria for LTACs or short-term rehabs, so they stayed at the hospital, or if they got really tired of staying in the hospital, the family would decide to just take over their care, but they also had to deal with PPEs, and they couldn't find that. And, for that question as well is who is going to be the sacrificial caregiver, a family caregiver, to take care of them, because obviously you're going to be exposed and you just don't know what type of exposure you're going to have.
Right.
So those are the questions that you had to really ask and have a safe discharge. And it really backed up the hospital. It really had a lot of logistical issues in that sense. It was the first time in 28 years that at times my wife in the ER, they never closed 24/7, right?
Right.
But then all of a sudden you saw the volume decrease, and so sometimes she was didn't have any shifts to go to, right? It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I would just bounce from ER to ER to do the overtime. But even with that, they didn't have any patients coming in because they're so afraid to come in.
Right.
So in that sense, it was the logistical issues that I had to deal with, the holistic planning for what's next out in the community and who would be able to handle that volume and also the sickness. There's some patients that, would eventually die after 3 months, sometimes 3 weeks. And we had to do the palliative bridge and hospice and all that. Something that we would be thinking about 10 to 15 years from now. And it really gave us an eye-opening experience that 78 million people are going to be dealing with this at a rapid rate, and you as a clinician and everybody else that's going to be experienced will have to answer these questions. We have to have that empathy, to have that discussion, to be frank about it, to talk about death and dying, and be really truthful as to what you wanted to do in your last year. So those are the things that really was compressed learning in.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
That sounds intense. Yeah, really intense for sure. My goodness.
So that's what clinicians, the physical therapists, the palliative nurses, the direct care staff, the aides will have to deal with. We had to work as a team to be able to, every touch point, have to address that with kind candor. So you don't feel like you're just in the hamster wheel, like, okay, you're almost dead, you might as well, what are we going to do with you? Right? And who's going to take care of you? And how are we going to be able to afford that? And if you were at a later stage or elderly and you outlived everybody, your support systems, then who's going to be taking care of you?
Right.
Those issues were really forefront of what I had to figure out.
Right. And so from that experience, I'm sure it was able to identify kind of holes in the system, right? Because everything was magnified, everything was rushed, everything was way more intense. So, you know, you had to take care of things faster and see, oh, wait, we don't have a solution for this, or we're not ready for this in those particular, you know, verticals of healthcare. And so what did you learn? Like, what did you see? What was exposed that you think now, like, you feel empowered to find solutions for?
So first of all is the support systems. Like I said, most of the ER patients that we have now are in their 80s and 90s.
Mm,
And let's say the 90-year-olds, their children are in their 70s,
right.
right? And so they're trying to take, let's say they're 97, one was 97, one was, the son was 76, and he was tired. He didn't have a life. He was taking care of his mother for like 55 years,
Mm,
and they're 97, 98, 99, and you're in your 70s and you're taking care of your parents. So I found that I need a second and third layer of contact, because if their um, caregiver burden is so high that they just kind of shut off, I like to know who's a backup, a
mm,
secondary and tertiary backup, to be able to say, okay, we have a safe discharge from the hospital point of view. But if it was our family, if it was your family, those are the questions that you're going to have to ask.
mm,
If they got sick, if somebody started dialysis, or somebody had chemotherapy and radiation therapy, going back and forth to those treatments or wound care clinics, transportation is utmost importance. And so one person, let's say, because everybody's busy, one person may take up to 10 different family members to be able to get to their appointments. Because if you
wow.
miss one, it's going to be backlogged for like months, let's say, right?
Right.
Or if you're going to have to go Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays for your dialysis, who's going to be doing that? Or
Mm,
if there is any disruption in the transportation, you have to have a backup to that, but everybody works, right? So
yep.
those are the logistical issues that we had to deal with. If people had long-term care insurance, it helps out a little bit. If they have the wrong Medicare insurance, or uh, well, a different type of Medicare insurance, let's say, um, it's tough to have care provided, because the insurance companies want to reduce their costs. So they
Mm,
would ask me to do the pre-authorizations, and some of the facilities don't accept them, or let's say they reduce their stay at the facility. So those are the things that um, I've seen. It's either your time or your money, is what I always say. But in this situation here, even if you had long-term care insurance and you have a way to pay for care, the caregivers weren't there.
right.
There's the billion-dollar company, let's say Bayada, still couldn't uh, provide caregivers because there was a shortage of them.
Right.
And down the road, it is so hard to be a caregiver, a direct caregiver, whether it's a non-medical care or a home health nurse. The volume is there, the people are more demanding, they're sicker, and sometimes they just don't want to do it
Yep.
anymore, right? And
Oh
if
yeah,
you
absolutely.
go to the hospital, if you're a travel nurse, let's say, um, the volume is there. The people are rude because they're just suffering and they're in pain and they want service now. And you're just, you're getting abused,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it always seems to come down to those things at the end of the day. Like, you know, it's such a complex ecosystem with so many moving parts, but at the end of the day, if there aren't caregivers that can help, like you said, even if you had the right insurance in place and you had the money to pay for everything, if there aren't the people that can come in and help, you know, those personal caregivers or home health RNs, whatever it might be, where does that leave us? So, you know, at the end of the day, it seems to always boil down to the staff shortage on
Mhm.
every level. And then, which is, compounded by they don't want to do the job anymore because I mean, I've been a caregiver and I've worked with a lot of CNAs. It's the hardest job ever. And that's not
Right.
taking anything away from RNs and PTs or anybody else, but it is so hard and you don't get paid
Right.
hardly anything. And it's like,
Right.
why would anybody want to do that? And I just was saying to a friend, imagine a world where a CNA made like $60,000 a year. What a game changer. That's not even that much money, but
Yeah.
it's doubling their salary, you
Right.
know? So what do you think the solution to that ongoing issue is that manifests itself, it seems, down every turn?
So let me go back and give you kind of perspective.
Yeah.
When I passed my, I became a nurse. Before I even took my boards, I was working at a hospital. My first job ever as a nurse was a lady was asking me if I ever did any home care
Mm-hmm.
because she found me at the hospital. She said, "You know, you're the most attentive assistant in here. Every time, you know, my client calls, you're there. Do you
Mm-hmm.
ever want to do home care?" And I said, "Well, you know, I just graduated as a nurse, and no, I really didn't think about it." So she sweetened the pot. She said, "Well, what if I pay you an hourly rate as a nurse, even if you didn't have your license? Because I've been taking care of my client for 10 years. I just need to be able to sleep through the whole night."
Mm-hmm.
So there I am. I was night shift for for her client, Mrs. B, who ended up living at the beach. It's a beach house,
Mm-hmm.
and she wanted to stay at home and be cared for at home. Eventually, she passed away. But to be able to get that type of care down the road in the future, you're going to have to sweeten the deal with all the CNAs or the home health aides.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some come through that have been employed for 9 years for the family, right? Because they treat them well, they pay them well. They're not part of some big box type of
Right.
home care company.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to happen. I don't care if you have long-term care insurance or other ways. Those great nurses and home health aides are going to be rare, and
Yep.
you better know how to pay them well,
Yep.
basically. That's on that end. That's what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
On the nurses side, that's where I'm pouring in all the experiences that my wife and I had to our recent graduate, right? Alyssa, she's a med surg nurse since January at a level 1 trauma center. And she has already had her story. She's been, you know, punched, uh,
Oh.
she's been vomited on. She had her stories, right?
Yeah.
But I tell her, just listen. I said, if I were to start this all over again, this is what I would do. So I've given her a roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, part of it is going to be coordinating with you because let's say she's going to have her 1 year of clinicals. She's going to focus on her clinicals. She's going to get her bachelor's in the fall. After
Mm-hmm.
6 months, I'm going to encourage her to uh, add additional clinical hours so
Mm-hmm.
that she can go travel,
Yeah.
right? And make the most money and be paid for what she's worth and
Right.
uh, really start out properly so that there be a lesser burnout rate for her
Yeah.
and also with her classmates or amongst her peers. She's going to be the model for that because we're just going to pour in. She's going to have the roadmap of 20 years.
Yeah.
On my end, because when I started, I did a lot of overtime. I think I've gamified it. I had 38 days straight of 7P, 7A,
Wow.
right? And then
My
58 days of 8-hour shifts. And from the ER, let's say, I would do a lot more overtime, talking about, travel nurses. I did local travel at the hospital in this health system here. I was working 3 out of 4 weekends, which was 6 shifts a week. It's just 6 shifts a month. And all the other times during the week, I would work for a local agency with 2 hospitals, and I just toggled. I just went all, they thought I was staff because I worked so much, right? So that's where I learned about being an independent contractor, net 90, all those other things, right? LLCs. And so she's going to learn all that step by step, right? Kind of like what you guys are teaching, cutting
Yep.
out the middleman,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. Minimizing taxes, which I know you're
yep,
super versed on, and have
yep,
them know as well, because the less taxes you pay, the more
yeah.
money in your pocket. Super important for people to understand.
And that's the picture that you saw. I think I posted it on
Mm,
Facebook.
yeah.
I had 3 pictures, imagine if you will, 3 pictures of Alyssa when she was 3, 17, and now 22. At 3 years old, she had the book open, How to Pay Zero Taxes. And then we
I
did the
love it.
same thing at 17, and now at 22, 0 taxes. And she's learning because she just said, "Oh, you know what? I just got a $5 an hour raise. What do I do?" And I said, only live 60% off of what you're making, and then put the rest off, so that you're just gonna be way ahead. By 25, you're gonna have this nest egg that you're gonna be able to not feel the burnout, because you feel like you have choices, because
Yep.
you're debt free and you're a saver.
Mm,
So hopefully she'll, be disciplined to follow through. And I think she's been doing it for quite a while. So I think she's going to do well. So,
nice. Yeah, and that's great to get folks traveling. I love and traveling locally. I know that's a big thing that we talk about with folks that we work with, because once you get set up properly, with
mhm,
your LLC and set up as a staffing agency, you're no longer subject to a lot of these rules and regulations that some of these agencies arbitrarily talk about. And so it's just about, educating yourself so that you can set yourself up to really be able to work in the best way possible, to have longevity in the field, which is what, so often. And I love that you're teaching, your family that, and by proxy, people on social media and obviously this podcast. But so often when we hear nurses that are talking about business, they're always advocating people get out of bedside. And what we're doing is advocating you go into business but stay bedside,
right,
because I'd like to live in a world where there's great nurses, that are there to
right.
care for me. And so I think it's wonderful that you're doing that as well. So thank you so much for being with us. And thank you so much for what you do. You and your family, amazing caregivers out there in the community, not too far from me either, right here in Pennsylvania. So I super appreciate all you guys do. And I'll just say, any final words that you want to leave the audience with, Eliseo?
So, I'll have my contact information with you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just, write my first and last name, and you'll connect with me. Uh, the other thing that I want to also let your listeners know is that those experienced nurses, now I know I talked about my daughter, but now my wife and I are going to be empty nesters. So I'm working on what's next for the both of us. And I
Nice.
have a solution, which is being a Medicare nurse navigator.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have resources for that. we'll talk about it maybe at a later time, but there is a way to transition out of bedside and still be profitable, as well as help a lot of people in your community. So watch out for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely love to do a full episode on that, and we'll make sure that everybody has your contact information and your website. You have a great website all about, the nursing aspect of your family as well. So we'll make sure everybody has that. Thank you so much again, Eliseo.
Thank you, FK.